And you asked for it after my jointer blade alignment video. The number one request is that I take a deep dive into the magnetic jigs that I used and show you how I set them up, and that is the topic of today's video. A set of these little magnetic jigs will make setting up your jointer blades both faster and simpler. So much so in my case that my jointer is probably seeing freshly sharpened blades more readily than it otherwise might. Two ways to set these up, and yes, you've guessed it, there's a simple way and then there's a harder way. I'll be showing you both. If you have no idea what I'm talking about or where the original request originated, I'm leaving the link to that video on the screen as well as on the description. But without wasting any more of your time, let's get over to the jointer and I'll show you how I set these guys up. Method one, and the easy one. Before we do anything else, always make sure that any machine you're working on is unplugged. What you'll need is your setting guides. You'll need a jointer. On mine, I've removed the fence. That gives me full access to my cutting head. It also gives me access to the pulley in the back here, so I can move the cutting head without getting my fingers involved and close to the blade. I've dropped the in-feed table. That allows me to easier use these jigs. Also, I've cleaned the cutting head. Any dust, chips or shavings here that get in under the magnetic guide will affect the accuracy. Prepping your jigs, simply a case of loosening the locking knob on the side and retracting the plunger as far as it will go. Place the jig onto the cutting head over the blade. I then feed the plunger down using the adjustment knob at the top, and I do so until I feel some level of resistance. Almost there. And there we go. I can feel resistance. That means the plunger has now met the cutting edge of your blade. Sorry, I'm jumping ahead, getting ahead of myself. The reason why this method is so easy is don't take out your blades. Sorry, should have mentioned that at the start. Don't take out your blades. Your blades become the reference by which you set your jigs. So that's what makes it easy. You're not taking out the blades, and of course that is assuming that your blade is nominally set up so that you're happy with the performance of your jointer. Sorry, I completely skipped that part. So I've twisted the plunger back out, so I've lifted it back up. So let's do it again. Twisting down until I feel some resistance. I then lock down the jig. If I can give you some advice, you'll see that there's numbers here. Write down these numbers. This will become your reference. Every time I change out my blades, even using these jigs, I always test, and some slight adjustments may sometimes be necessary. And having that value somewhere gives me a reference to start off from. If we look at the jigs, or my jigs in particular, you'll see that I have labeled them. One I've labeled F for front and the other one B for back. What that tells me is where I should be using each one of the magnetic jigs. The reason why that is important is cutting heads are not always perfectly parallel to your outfeed table. As long as they are somewhat parallel, the finer adjustments on these jigs allow you to set your blade perfectly parallel with your outfeed table, and that is why I really like these. The second method is no harder than the first, but it does tend to take a little bit more time, and you would need to do this particular procedure if you've taken out your blade. The detail-orientated person that I am followed the instructions on this little one-pager, and that requires you to take out the blade. I then lost the reference of a ideally set up jointer, and you then set up the jigs according to the method and test, and then come back and set and test. So a lot of adjustments are required and back and forth, and that is what takes the time. So avoid taking out your blade before you set up your jigs. Now for this method, you'll need some way or some reference to do the initial installation of your blades. I'm using the jig that came with my jointer, the depth adjustment jig. You could use something like this if you have it, or you could reinstall the blades and set it up like you normally would and then adjust or set up your jigs as we did in method 1. I've swapped out the blunt blade for a fresh one. I've used this to install and align the blade. This now becomes my new reference for setting my jigs. And again, as we did the first time around, you release the locking knobs on your jigs, retract the plungers all the way out. We install the jigs and you simply set them up. Wait for the resistance. There we go. Tighten the locking knob. Both jigs are now set up, but they are set to this reference. I will then go and check the alignment of the blade. The method that I usually use is the one that I shared in the previous video. You can go and have a look at that, but use any method that you prefer. Any adjustments that you then need to make, you make directly on the jig. Bringing the plunger up will increase the height of the cutting edge of your blade in relation to the cutting head. Pushing the plunger down or winding it down will deepen the cutting edge in relation to the cutting head. You make those adjustments until such time as you're happy with the performance. I like these jigs because they make the process of swapping out jointer blades and aligning them quickly and easy. It has a secondary benefit in that I tend to swap out blades or dull blades for sharp ones more readily. That improves the quality of my work and the accuracy. There's 2 amendments or corrections I'd like to do to 2 of the videos on my channel. The first is, and that's the video that inspired this one. In that video I showed you how I set up the jointer blades. The very first batch of wood that I processed, after doing the video, I seemed to get a lot of snipe. In the process of trying to figure out what it was, I decided to lift up the outfeed table on the jointer slightly just to lessen the depth of the cut, and that seemed to alleviate the problem. And I continued raising the outfeed table until the snipe was completely gone. If you follow along with that video and you follow my setup steps and the tests and so forth, and you do get snipe, try to lift the outfeed table and see if you can relieve the problem. The second correction or addition, probably addition, to a video is on one of the videos in my hand plane basics series. I showed you how to put a back bevel on my number 5 jack so that you can either avoid or fix tear out. What I omitted during the video is when you bring the chib brake and the blade back together is the bottom edge where the chib brake meets the blade needs to be in front of the back bevel. Don't have it so close to the cutting edge that it sits on the back bevel. I felt that I needed to add that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I am leaving the link on the screen as well as on the description. You can go and check out the whole series there. I've got all the videos together as a course. Again, I'd like to send out a heartfelt thanks to everybody who has liked any one of my videos or subscribed to my channel or taken the time to leave their comments in the comment section, and to those guys who have inspired this one by asking me to show you how I set up the jig. I do need to apologize. It's taken longer than I expected. In this video or any one of my other videos, if you've got ideas for other videos or things you'd like me to show you, please leave the comments there. I read all of them. That though brings us to end of this edition of Ply Creations, and before I leave you, I'd like to remind you, unplug your machines before you work on them. Until I see you in the next video, I hope you have a good one. By the way, this is another follow-up, or the next video is going to be another follow-up on comments that I had on the video where I showed you how to make a strop. But until I see you then, I hope you have a good one. Cheers.